Lindsay Smith, staff writer at Risk Magazine, and I'm interviewing Adnan Akants at Fischer Francis Trees Watts. Great. So I think the first thing I was going to ask on was the Federal Reserve and the potential rate hike that I think many people think is going to come this year. What's your view, and particularly on emerging markets, how do you think that's going to affect them in the context of what happened a couple of years ago when there was rumours certainly of that potentially happening back then?
Yes, it's going to be a very interesting Fed interest rate cycle. The Fed is very keen to get going. And the reason for that is not that they actually have to go, because inflation and growth aren't really particularly strong in the U.S., but they would like to get away from the zero bound and have some room and sort of normalize interest rates, get going on the process. So I think they will have the opportunity to do that, and it will either come in September or December. And the reason they don't have to go is inflation is relatively low, so it's not an issue, but the unemployment rate has really come down a lot, and there may not be a lot more slack, and wages may start accelerating. So for all those reasons, the Fed will start tightening. But the critical question will be not so much when they go and how much they go by, but what is the path going to be from there on? And depending on conditions, emerging markets will behave differently. So if you just have a one-off, sort of tightening this year and then slowly sort of tightening next year a little bit, then emerging markets will probably be fine. They've already sold off quite a bit. Some of them are cheap, and it will be taken in stride. But if it turns out that we are approaching the 2% inflation limit, unemployment is really at low levels, and wages are accelerating, and growth is picking up, then the path may be steeper than we expect. And the market will price that in relatively quickly. And that probably will give a shock to emerging markets. So I'm open-minded on which path it's going to be.
It's very interesting. A number of people obviously have predicted that it's going to come in September, this rate hike. Do you think the market is prepared better than it was, say, in summer of 2013 when the rumours were swirling around that this might happen then?
Yeah, well, it's never, the market just can't discount big events like that. So it's not, again, the timing to me, whether it's September or December, isn't as critical as whether the path thereafter is steep or not so steep. And I think markets will sort of decide that and evaluate that at the time that this happens. I don't think that everyone has already fully discounted the future. And we see that so many times. When, for example, the ECB did QE, we had talked about it for a long time, but that led to a big drop in the euro, even though it was something that we should have known for at least 3 to 6 months prior to the event.
And just lastly, whether it is steep or not so steep, are there any particular currencies you think that will be affected, or baskets of currencies you think will be affected better or worse than others?
Well, obviously, when the Fed starts raising rates, anything with carry, sort of interest rate dependent, does poorly, because what happens is that a lot of investors were in those currencies because they yield more, will find that the yield advantage is not as good anymore, and therefore they will get shaken. So the high yielders typically are not the place you want to be. But it's all a matter of degree. I think they will all get hit. So there is no place to hide in emerging markets, certainly. Among the currencies, the major currencies, certainly the dollar will probably do better.
All right.